So, greetings and merry meet. We hear that necessity is the mother of invention. But today's guest is a mom who became the inventor of the necessary. So, if you're considering starting or scaling up a business, our LeadUP guest shared in an interview, you are never too old and it is never too late to chase your dreams and achieve new goals. I'm Dr. Kathryn Bingham, founder of LEADistics, a veteran and woman-owned small business. I serve the needs of executives, entrepreneurs, and professionals to help them reinvent, redesign, pivot, change their life, change their work, and change the world. We would all hope to be able to do that. I am also the author of Driving Pink. Our guest today is Beth Fynbo. Beth, great to have you. She spent a decade in military service in the Army and another in corporate work. Then she made some observations after starting a family, which sparked inspiration to solve an age-old problem faced by every parent. She's both a Shark Tank entrepreneur and president and founder of Busy Baby LLC. So Beth, welcome.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So, I started with this idea that it's never too late to follow your dreams. Can you tell us just a little bit about your own journey and that belief that we can always change and follow a new path that inspires us?
Yeah, it kind of started with my mom, actually. When I was younger, she had a job that she didn't love.
Mhm.
And I remember talking to her when she was about 40 and saying, Mom, just go back to school for something else that you like to do. I mean, she never went to college. She was just doing a kind of a manual labor job. I said, go to school. What do you want to do? And she's like, oh, I can't now. It's too late. I've already spent 20 years in this job. I can't do something different now. And I thought, yeah, you can. And she never did. And she eventually retired and it was fine. But she did enjoy her life through those years. And so at the time I was 20 and I joined the military and I got to the 10-year mark in the military. And that's kind of the spot where
Mhm.
people say you either shit or get off the pot. Like you're either
Yes.
staying into retirement or you're done. And I thought, I've had a great experience, but I'm ready to control my own life and decide where I live and decide what I do. So
Mhm.
I got out of the military and I did the things you're supposed to do. I went to school and got my degree and I got a job that paid the bills. And I found myself in the same spot my mom was in. I
Mm.
had a great job, making good money, bought a house, and it just was, I didn't love it. I wasn't inspired every day when I got up. I was doing what I should do and what you're supposed to do. Um, and I just knew someday I wanted to have my own business. My dad had his own business my whole life, and I had always aspired to do that. But he made it very clear if you're going to have your own business, you need to be very passionate about that business because times will get hard. And if you don't have the passion behind it, you're not going to get through the hard times. And up to that point, there was nothing I was ever that passionate about until I met the right guy and I started a family and I had a baby. And I went on maternity leave as I was fortunate enough to do for 12 weeks. And then I went back to work. And one of the first days back to work, my friends who are two stay-at-home moms, they took me out to lunch to kind of check on my mental health. It's really hard to make that transition.
Mhm.
And they brought their 1-year-old daughters with them. And that is when I really saw the pain of having little ones at the table with you, because they're constantly grabbing for everything within reach, dropping things on the ground, and we couldn't have a full conversation. And so I had an idea that week for a product that would stop babies from dropping and throwing their toys. And that's what I ultimately created and what Busy Baby is. And so I ditched the corporate job eventually, and now I'm in, I guess, what I'm feeling like is my third phase of life. I had my military phase, my corporate phase, and now I'm in my entrepreneurship phase, running Busy Baby.
That's awesome. And let's do real quick. I am going to share my screen so that people can see just what Busy Baby is. Hold on. Here we go. So this is the website, and this is the standard Busy Baby mat. It's silicone and it comes in a gazillion awesome colors. It has tethers and hooks and a place for snacks. And there's also other products that go with it that people can get. We'll probably show more of those later, but you've got a bib now that has
Mhm.
things. There's also a longer, narrower one or a narrower one that just you could have the snacks in. And I want to point these out because I'm going to show them later, the utensils, which are great. So let me stop sharing, but I just wanted to take a minute so that if people are hearing busy baby, what the heck is that? Want people to
Yes.
get a picture in their mind. What was that? You know, before the success, right? We have great ideas. We have to develop our ideas in our businesses. And several organizations offer free support for entrepreneurs. So SBA, SCORE, and for the military, Bunker Labs, right? So for our military, active duty, transitioning veterans, military spouses. And I found this quote, if I hadn't participated in the Bunker Labs program, I probably wouldn't be in business at all. Going through Bunker Labs gave me the knowledge, resources, and confidence to keep taking baby steps forward. No pun intended. So, how do organizations like Bunker Labs enable budding entrepreneurs?
I think a lot of these ideas, like you started this conversation, come out of necessity. And the people who come up with the ideas don't necessarily have the background to
Mhm.
start a business. And so when you have a great idea for a product or a service and don't know where to go, it's like, to what steps do I even take to turn this into a business? That's a great idea. You know, my friends, my family all agree it's a great idea, but now what? And
Mhm.
so I think, you know, having been in the military and learned how to use every resource possible, I immediately just reached out to use every resource possible because I know there's got to be a way and people who help do this. So let me find those people.
Mhm.
And so I'm so grateful that I came across Bunker Labs really early on in my journey. And it was a handheld step by step. How do you take your idea and turn it into a business process?
Mhm. Yeah, I love them. I have followed quite a few folks, and we don't have a chapter. They're going to try and get one in every state. We don't have one yet in South Carolina, but they have one in North Carolina. So I've driven up for meetups in Raleigh. But they really have such excellent resources. And if they don't have a Bunker Labs in your area, if you're listening, and I'm going to add that as a link into the description, as well as how, if you're in the services or you have a connection to the military or your military spouse, I want you to be able to get at Bunker Labs. So I'm going to add that into the description.
Yeah, they have
So
great online resources as
they
well.
have their online material is just excellent.
Mhm.
Now they walk you through different ways and different phases, and they give you all kinds of resources. Just the online training, every lesson has more resources, which is really incredible. But one of the things that startups clearly contend with right away is funding to start or scale a business. And I know that you tried several things: pitch competitions, you did Kickstarter, you went to Shark Tank. So, what insights did you gain from those experiences, and which ones were the most successful for you?
I honestly think they were all successful in one way or another. So even though my Kickstarter failed, that is a great thing, it turns out, because I didn't know what I didn't know in the
Mm-hmm.
very early days. And had my Kickstarter succeeded, I would have failed because I had no idea of the total costs that go into manufacturing and production and shipping and all the things. So for me, having failed the Kickstarter was very beneficial because I learned so many lessons in that process. So as far as funding goes, I didn't get the funding, but I also learned so many lessons that helped me in
Mm-hmm.
my next steps. Um, I think it's important to start small and grow slow until you have true market validation. So for me, I started with just kind of my savings, or I was still working my full-time job, so whatever I could use after, paying the bills. And I borrowed some money from my stepdad. I sold a car that I had, was kind of my fun summer car, but I had grown out of it since starting a family. I took out a home equity line of credit on my house. And then the pitch competitions. Not only were the pitch competitions helpful in the fact that I won money, but the process of going through the competition and trying to win it, you have to pull together a good business plan. You have to
That's
really
right.
become really good at articulating what your business is and what your plans and goals are, which helps, keep you on the path. And that the more pitches and competitions you do, you're continually doing that, where, it's been a while since I've done a pitch competition now. And not that I've lost focus on the plan and the path, but I am now more focused on all the other things. And it might be good for me to actually apply for another pitch competition so I can come back to that, make sure my business plan is up to date and all the things that you have to do for a pitch competition.
Now, I think one of the things that really came out of Shark Tank was that you then got invited all over for media exposure. You've been on several podcasts and media programs, and you had some journalism activities that you've done in the past. What suggestions would you make to other entrepreneurs who are interested in leveraging similar opportunities?
I don't know necessarily that a lot of that came from Shark Tank. So
Could
Shark
have come
Tank
from,
definitely had a benefit of getting some national exposure, but it was more like a 2-week marketing event.
okay, great.
We had great sales, obviously, when we aired. And then for the first week or two, we had tons of people reaching out. It's actually more people who are trying to help your business grow,
Hmm.
because they know you're an entrepreneur and they're looking to sell you their services. And then, of course, there's some, PR stuff that comes out of being on national television. But then the next episode of Shark Tank airs in your old news and no one's heard of you and everyone's forgotten you. So now, Shark Tank wasn't the life-changing event that I thought it was going to be. It definitely was a great marketing thing. And now I can forever say, as seen on Shark Tank, and it's a great conversation piece. It suddenly makes you way more interesting in any conversation. So that's really great for, investor meetings or business meetings. Just a differentiator, I guess. But really it's PR. It's reaching out to journalists who are looking for content, because every single media outlet is looking for content. You just have to find them. And so there's resources online. There's a website called Help a Reporter Out, where
Yes.
reporters are posting what they're looking for. And if you just set up the email updates and browse that each day, you'll see something that maybe is relevant for you. And you just send an email to that person. And before you know it, you're sitting on their podcast.
I love it. I just use the acronym HARO in my
Yep.
mind, right?
Yep.
And I get that, every day. You get
Mhm.
morning, evening, and based on your interests and what have you, you'll get business, lifestyle. For those who are listening, Help a Reporter Out will feed you inquiries from folks who would like to promote an idea in some kind of way. It could be a podcast, could be an actual media outlet. It could be
Could be a
an
blog. I
article
mean,
for a magazine. I mean, there's just innumerable ways that people communicate, and they use this as a channel for accessing individuals who can provide direct content for them to write about or talk about. So it's really a good resource. Um, One of the things that you went through is that whole product development from the minimum viable product to that full-fledged busy baby mat. What was that process for you?
it started with cutting and gluing things together that I bought on Amazon. It was whatever limits I have in my creative mind, because I'm not a creative mechanical person.
Uh-huh.
So I was literally just buying, I knew I wanted it to be silicone. and I knew I wanted to suction, so I bought suction cups and silicone mats off of Amazon, and I cut and glued things together to make something work. So that was the, maybe $100 total, my minimal viable product. And I made one for myself and one for my friend, and she said, you got to make this thing for real. So my thought was, how do I even do that? I don't know how I've done as much as I can with this really, just horrible looking
What's a
cut and glued
mock-up? You
together
have to have
thing,
a mock-up so that people understand
Yeah.
what it
And it
is
was
you're
so
trying to
it was
communicate.
functional. So what I ended up doing based on my Bunker Labs experience, because this was all happening while I was in Bunker Labs, is I went to a trade show for my industry. So it
Mm.
was a baby and kids trade show. And I went to that trade show and I just walked the floor. So as an attendee, and I had my little prototype mashed up in my purse, and I walked the infant and baby aisle, and I just talked to other people there, which it turns out a lot of these companies all started just like me. They were a mom or a dad that invented something, or a person who had an idea. Ultimately, that's how all products and businesses come to life, is someone had an idea. And so I talked to a mom who had a product, and I had seen it in Target. And so I was so excited to meet her in real life. And she had a story just like mine, where she had an experience with her baby that she solved the problem. And now she's, launching her third product, and she's got a booth at this show. And I asked her to mentor me, and she said, I wish I could mentor people, but I have 2 little kids and I'm on my third product and just very busy. She's like, but I'll talk to you here at the show. And so I asked her, what's her biggest lesson learned in her journey? And it was, hire professional product developers. Unless you know how to do CAD drawings, design for manufacturing, you're going to have to pay to have product developers anyway. And she's like, I think she had done one of those, 1-800-invent.com, and they had kind of run her through a ringer. And so she still had to start over with professional product developers. And I said, that's great advice. Thank you. And I'm thinking, how do I find a product developer? I don't even just Google it and find one. So I continued down the aisle, and I talked to another baby company and told them my story, and they said the same thing. I said, you need a professional product developer. I said, okay, how do I find that? And they're like, well, we have a really good one. We're happy to, connect you. I said, yeah, please. That would be awesome. So long story short, they connected me to my product developers, and I was very fortunate that I landed on a fantastic company from the get-go. Not everybody has that experience, but I still work with them today.
That's awesome.
And they work backwards from manufacturing. So they first think about, you have some product developers, you tell them your idea, they're going to draw up your idea. Whether or not it makes sense in manufacturing, they don't care. You're paying them to draw up your idea. With my product developers, they operate from manufacturing backwards. So I told them my idea. The first thing they thought is, what's going to be the most efficient way to manufacture this idea?
Right.
And then they drew it up with that in mind the entire time.
That's
So
awesome.
that's kind of how I did it. I started working with them, and they guided me through the process. And then they also do a handoff to a sourcing agent that helps find the manufacturers and pull it all together.
That's great. That's great. Now you have subsequently expanded what is available on the website. And I did some scrolling when we first started to show the viewers that they could see these different things. In addition, the products that are quote unquote your own, right? You also, I was watching some of the Instagram posts, and you're also providing access to quality adjacent products. So I think one of the things that caught my eye was the spoons with the mesh or something where, and I think of it as, I used to have something like that was a pacifier, and that for my granddaughter, you could put a strawberry in it. They could suck on the strawberry and they're not going to choke on that. And so this seemed to be a similar item. So there's things in addition on the website. So it's a one-stop shop. People can not only buy the products that you have expanded your line, but if they are a quality adjacent product that makes sense to go with what you have, you've included those as available, which is great for parents, busy parents. We talk about busy baby, but let's remember the busy parent. So I love that you've curated items that pair really well with busy baby. would you be interested in doing a real-time brainstorm? Because I know you're thinking of expanding your line in other ways.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, absolutely.
let me share another screen real quick. When you first started, one of the first things that I had in the Bunker Labs sent you was, hey, are you ever going to think of doing this for seniors? Because I have a senior mom and I was thinking ahead. She was perfectly capable, but I was thinking ahead that not only would this be really great for um, babies, but at some point as seniors progress through their timeline of ability, they also could benefit by things that mirror really well with your product. So a couple of the things that subsequent to that, I have inherited adults, one of which after the death of a family member, so one of which has dementia. And so when I think of your next phase, and I know you're working on stuff, I thought I'd share some of the things that I see and that I use all of the time. And you could, you know, use whatever. So here's those utensils that you have on your website. And for individuals with dementia in particular, they begin to have problems swallowing. So having these small babies, almost baby size, helps them take small bites. That so having utensils that are similar to the baby utensils, they could even be the same ones. I just haven't had one in my hand, so I can't tell you if the grip size on the handle needs to be bigger or not. But think of any time you see a senior, they do have senior utensils that have a softer, larger grip. And having that similar to a baby's grip where it's bigger, it's not the flat utensil. I think that's a great addition that will work well for it as you move into this. Notice I gave it a name, Brain Bright.
I like the
I'm just making
alliteration
it
to
up.
stay with the bees.
And you can have it. Well, that's what I thought. Busy baby, brain bright. So anyway, and it's all yours. Anything I have here is yours. Your mat was 8.5 by 11. So I just pivoted the 11. So that's, if you really tilted this, it'd be the same. But standard dinner plates are like 8 to 9 inches in diameter. So you'd want that 11 in the depth, but you'd want a place for a cup, because I know that my guy has a hard time sitting it down. It could even be a separate square with a ring, right? Just a little separate, like you'd have a mouse pad. So that's an idea.
I don't know if you've seen it on our website, but we have another mat called the toddler mat, and it's 11 by 15, and it's
See that I haven't seen
it's
it.
essentially the same
The
thing.
same idea. So see, you may already be there, right? The other thing that I do with, so they can use it for puzzles, they can use it for their painting projects. And let me show you, because that's one of the things I do use a silicone mat. There are these products for, and so as you have adjacent items, these are super awesome. They'd be great for toddlers too, actually.
Yep.
But basically, they all have a set of 4 images, and then they're blank, right? So they have an outline, and essentially you use a paintbrush with water, and then it gives you the image. The image comes, and then they dry, and you could do it again. Like you could use it over and over again. So having a place where the difference between, say, the toddler's divided tray for their snacks.
Well, our toddler mat doesn't have a tray at all.
Oh, well, I don't mean, but I mean this little separate one.
Sure.
Down at the bottom left.
The mini mat, yes.
The mini mat. if instead of having a divided snack place, you left it open or had a bigger one that you could put the paintbrushes in, or pens when they're working on their books that have the brain games and things like that. And then you could add a drink item. So I just wanted to throw out ideas from a real-time user of items, and you can ask me any question you want about
I do have a
seniors
question.
use.
Yeah. So we are developing all of our products in an assistive technology aspect for not only children with disabilities, but adults with disabilities. And we're working with a lot of OT, PT
Perfect.
therapists.
I have OT and PT folk that come into the home.
And the one comment we've really taken away, the biggest comment, is with the utensils, we need the grip to be bigger. So keep that
Yes.
silicone shape and feel, but just bigger.
Yes.
And it's interesting to hear that you, as for use with adults, that you want to keep that spoon head and the fork, smaller so that they can't take too much. As I thought about creating it for adults, I just assumed that we would make the adult size, spoon head and fork head, but it's interesting to hear that aspect of keeping it smaller so they don't give themselves too much. My question would be with the cup holder. What I noticed with the kids is when they try to put it back into that space, and let's imagine that it's got a raised edge around it, like tray the mat. My son has a hard time putting it in there perfectly so that it doesn't hit that ledge and
The
the
rim.
edge and tip over. And I wonder if adults with disabilities, especially maybe those with Parkinson's, if that would be more of a problem to have that, then it would help.
And that was one of the other thoughts that I had, that could it be, it doesn't even need to be there. But I was just trying to think of, as they go through different stages, and maybe having it as a separate square to the side that is just the square, that here's where you could put it, and it may not have a full-on rim. But the idea of having that space that's designated, because
Yeah.
what I find is that we need repetition and we need feedback all of the time. So when I can give a visual signal that it goes here, that's really helpful. And
Yeah.
maybe it isn't a raised rim,
Just a
maybe
visual cue.
it's a visual cue
Mhm.
that's on there, which could also work really, really well.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of like, I forget which part of Lean Six Sigma it is, but where you outline where each thing in your workbench goes, and then
Right.
you put it back each time and you know what it's missing. And I think that's a great spot. One of the aspects we love about our product for assistive technology is that the silicone is non-slip. And so it makes it much easier for people with disabilities to pick up their pills if they have,
Yes.
they're not sliding around, or even the food. For my son, he plays Legos on his toddler mat because the Legos don't slide around all over the place. And it kind of keeps them contained. He's got, little designated spots for each color. So I think the visual cue idea is good. That little circle could be good for any number of things to include the cup.
Sure, sure. Or it could even be that place that somebody puts the medication, that they go grip it up and they know to look right there.
Yep.
That's where their medication is going to be. So I just thought, throwing it out there and giving you a chance to ask somebody who's in the throes of the experience of how we might transition. But definitely what happens to adults with dementia in particular, and I don't know about other disabilities, but their ability to swallow diminishes over time. And it's been very difficult to keep that cue of, you have to cut your bites much smaller or he chokes. He wants to take the big old guy bites that he used to
Yeah.
do when he'd grab a burrito and, you know.
Do you
And
feel in your experience that it's important to be able to hook things up to the mat like we do with the kids?
I think that is going to become really important. He hasn't gotten too many of the dropsies yet, but it is a phase. So if the capability is there, then the product grows with us as we move through
Yeah.
the different stages. So that's why I loved, in addition, when I saw the soft handle, and not necessarily making, I mean, maybe there's an in between baby and adult size, but I really like the fact that they're not big for the other
Yeah.
reason. And I do love the fact that I could hook it up with the hole that's in the handle. So that's why I threw those things out there on the visual for folks and for you to see. And maybe this sparks ideas from other people when they see and hear our conversation, and they might send you some additional really awesome ideas. But,
Yeah.
different people will, and different abilities. We have 40.8 million people in the United States, I believe, that have some form of disability. And so I think that the idea of having products, and there is a whole industry for that, but
Mhm.
this in particular for me has always been in the back of my mind that this would be awesome. Awesome. And my mother-in-law was in long-term care, and she could not hold things as she moved
Mhm. Yeah,
towards
we lose motor skills. We start with no motor skills and we end with, diminished motor skills.
she couldn't hold a phone. We would FaceTime her. And so anything, that's silicone that has the ability for her at that time that would have made it easier. I just think these things would be really, really beneficial. So I'm really excited that you're moving that direction. I'm going to stop screen sharing so we can come back to our conversation. And I need to drop this off my screen so that it's always better when you don't have a zillion things on your screen.
Yes.
you know, um, Before we conclude our conversation, what I'd love to do is ask the audience, and our audience is watching us after the fact, but I always ask a question. So here's your question, folks, if you're listening or watching the YouTube. What dream do you have that you have not yet moved forward on? What I want you to share your thoughts on is one step that you could take today. So it could be a step that is make a list of the steps, or it could be spend 10 minutes on internet research. So I read every comment and I will respond to you if you put something there, it's going to send me a little ping and I will come back right away and tell you something and get back with you. So Beth, anyone that listens to LeadUP Conversations knows that I help leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals, change makers, think about the concept of the pivot.
Mhm.
So you can answer this one of two ways. Either what's next for you? Is there another pivot? Or what's a pivot that you'd like to share that made a difference in this journey that you've been on?
I mean, I think the biggest pivot to share is how we pivoted our business, which resulted in 800% growth.
Mm-hmm.
That's a pretty big one. As I
Huge.
mentioned earlier, I had the idea for the product in a restaurant. And in my entrepreneurial tunnel vision of creating the product to solve this problem, I was creating and creating marketing for a product to use in restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I brought the product to market in 2019 and that worked great. Everyone saw the value. It made all the sense in the world. And then in 2020, when we had a pandemic and there was no more restaurants, immediately I was like,
Now
orders
what?
stopped coming in because there's no restaurants. And
Mm-hmm.
so we pivoted right away because the biggest key point I want to share is listen to your customers. Our product line has expanded because of our customers' input. But our customers started telling us how useful the products were at home on the high chair, at home during a Zoom call, all the ways they're using it at home. And so we pivoted everything to feature how our mats are useful at home. And we grew 800% that year.
That's awesome.
So it's hard when you're an entrepreneur and you have your idea for your business, your service, whatever, and like that's what you're here to do. But outside of that tunnel vision, there are probably a ton of other options of how else someone could use your product or service. And so I would challenge people, to say, if the main use case for your item disappeared tomorrow, what
Mhm.
else could people do with your product or your service or whatever it is that you're offering? How else could they benefit from it? Because that could help you grow your business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Any final thoughts before we close out?
I just like to tell people every time, like, you can always start chasing a dream. You are never, ever, ever, ever too old to take an idea that you've had in the back of your mind forever and just make, like you said, what's the first step? Just maybe take the first next step and see what happens from there, and see if you want to take another one. Because that's how I got here.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. And I want to thank everyone who's taken the time to listen to the conversation with Beth and I today. Please subscribe to the channel so that you know when the next awesome conversation hits the feed. And that will help you learn how to grow, how to pivot, how to live for today, not someday. And we will add a link for the site for Busy Baby in the description. Here's a few other ways that you can reach out and connect with Beth. The website, which I showed you earlier, is busybabymat.com. Beth is available on LinkedIn. Her Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok links will also be in the program description, so you'll be able to just connect. And then I will also add the link to bunkerlabs. So if you happen to be military affiliated, we would love for you to connect with them if you would love to explore the idea of being an entrepreneur. So with one more thank you, I just want to encourage you to go forth and do great things. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me and all the great ideas too.